Thanks to Satoshi for magic internet money.
Hello, thank you very much for tuning back in to the Magic Internet Money Podcast. This is Brad Mills, and let me start off with a little Brad Shills. I'm not sponsored by this company, but I've been using this product for about a year now. It's Casa. I mentioned it on the last episode, but Casa has been very helpful for me because I sometimes get these degenerate urges to want to go take some of my cold storage Bitcoin and go pull the slot machine and play the Coinbase casino and buy some low cap shit coins in a bid to, 10x my Bitcoin or something like that. But as the markets have shown over long periods of time, usually there's bubbles where you can make some money, but if you're not in and out at the right times and you're not practicing good risk management, you're going to actually lose money. And most of these altcoins go to zero or near zero, 95% losses or something like that. So being a Casa client has actually helped curtail those ill-gotten adventures where I'm just feeling the FOMO and feeling the urge to invest in an altcoin or something to double my Bitcoin. Because Casa has a way to protect your Bitcoin where your keys are spread across 5 different devices, which you put in different geographical locations, maybe one in the safety deposit box at the bank, one with your lawyer, bury one out in the woods, whatever you want to do. However, you want to protect your Bitcoin with Casa. It does make it difficult to make impulse spending decisions and to make these bad investments and stuff. So I've been saved more than once by Casa because I've been like, I want to spend Bitcoin in this, or I want to do this. And because it's so hard to access my Bitcoin through Casa, it actually makes it like I have to think. I think they call it think in a higher time preference. I don't get that whole thing, but whatever it is, I just have to think more about delayed gratification. And do I want this now? Should I wait for this? Should I even spend it at all? So I have to think through my decisions a lot more clearly. And it's helped me. So thank you, Casa. Thank you, Jeremy and Elena and Jameson. They created Casa because this was something that they wanted to do. Elena was the founder of Trezor, which is a popular hardware wallet company. Jameson was a developer and a security expert. And Jeremy was an early Bitcoiner, an entrepreneur. And they decided to get together and create Casa for people who want to store their Bitcoin more safely. Now, it's also good for your own protection. Like if you're worried that you're a public Bitcoiner and people may think that they can just come up to you with a wrench and get your Bitcoins. If you're a Casa member, no one's going to be able to steal your Bitcoin because it's like having your money in a bank. It's not easy to get money in a bank, and it's not easy to get Bitcoin that's spread across different geographical areas. So we just had some news coming out this last week that banks in the US are going to be allowed to start custodying Bitcoin, which is good and bad news. But I think it's good news because that also makes it more safe and more trustworthy for the average person. It would be great if it was multi-signature like Casa. I don't know if that's how it's going to work. If it was like you could have a key, the bank could have a key, and then, put another key with a different bank or with a lawyer or whatever you want to do, a trusted friend. If you could have your bank custodying your Bitcoin, but you can still have access so they can't rehypothecate your Bitcoin or steal your Bitcoin, that would be an ideal scenario. So we are still early in this thing. It is still kind of scary to hold your own Bitcoin for some people, but Casa makes it kind of takes the stress and anxiety away, because if you can't access it and no one else can access it easily, it does make it a bit more less stressful to be able to hold Bitcoin. So thank you, Casa, and let me just again say I'm not sponsored by them. I don't have any sponsors. And let me tell you about this episode quickly and we'll get right into it. Jordan Harbinger is a friend of mine who we talk about how we met and stuff, but he's got a #1 podcast on Apple. He's not a public Bitcoiner, but he's been in Bitcoin for a long time. And I like to have these conversations with friends of mine, the entrepreneurs and authors and successful people that I've managed to network with and meet through the years, and who are into Bitcoin, but don't they're not Bitcoin influencers. So I try to like make this podcast geared towards the average Joe, but also speak to people who may be a higher net worth and maybe want to hear some insights from entrepreneurs and folks like that about what they think about the whole Bitcoin thing. And this is one of those episodes. It was a great catch up with Jordan, and I hope you guys enjoy this. It's a short one. Usually they go for a couple hours, but we tried to keep this one to, I think, 1.5 hours. So without further ado, I just want to ask you, if you've been enjoying the podcast, please give me a like or a subscribe or a review. A review would be nice too. And if you want, just send me a DM on Twitter to let me know what you think. Let me know any guests you'd want me to try to go get. My handle on Twitter is @BradMillsCan. So, with that out of the way, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys, and let's get on with the episode.
What am I going to do?
Brad Mills is a partner at X Squared Ventures. All opinions expressed by Brad and his guests do not reflect the opinions of X Squared Ventures or X Squared Management. Investing in cryptocurrencies is high risk and you can get wrecked. Do not treat any opinion expressed on this show as investment advice, but only as an expression of Brad's opinion. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Do not attempt to hodl without doing your research first.
The world's not the way it used to be. No.
So welcome to the Magic Internet Money Podcast, Jordan Harbinger, if the podcast is still called that by the time we put this episode out.
That's right. Yeah. Are you changing the name a lot?
I am thinking of changing the name. That was one of the things I was interested in talking to you about, was your opinion on Bitcoin's branding and the brand of Magic Internet Money and things like that. But maybe we can get into that later. I wanted to bring you on because I have recently listened to an episode of somebody else's podcast that you were on, where you talked about your really interesting and entertaining history of being a youngster, like phone freaking and like learning about hacking and all this stuff, and then working for the FBI or something like that eventually.
Yeah, so I don't know how much of that you want to hear, so just stop me when you get bored, but...
Well, firstly, let me explain. If people don't know who you are, you've had a really successful podcast career since podcasting even was a thing. And you got a top podcast right now, the Jordan Harbinger Show, and you've had like so many interesting guests on. We were just talking about Ray Dalio. You were talking to Ray Dalio recently, and you had Kobe Bryant. Recently you had Bob Saget on.
Yeah.
So you get really interesting, cool guests. So it's an honor to have you on my show, where all 10 of my listeners are gonna maybe hear some cool stories through osmosis.
Hey man, 10 more potential listeners and I get to catch up with you? Cool, sign me up.
Did we meet at the Mastermind Talks in Toronto in 2014?
So I may have missed that one, because Mastermind Talks, which is where you and I did meet at some point, not sure which year, I originally got invited, which I didn't realize that like getting invited to this was like getting admitted to Harvard Law School in terms of the number of the statistics of who they let in, like 16,000 applicants and like 150 people get to go or something like that. I didn't realize that. So, and it might not have been that way back then. So when Jason Gaynard, who runs it, was like, hey, do you want to come to my event? I've run 2 of these and it's like $8,000, $7,000. I was like, no, who's this crazy guy on Facebook who thinks I'm going to give him, I don't know, maybe it was like $4,000, but either way, it was thousands of dollars. Who's this guy who thinks I'm just going to send him money? I've never met him before. He's a guy in a Facebook group that I'm in, and I'm going to fly to Canada from California after paying this. Like, who? I don't know any of these people. So I said no to like the first 2 of these, and then people just kept saying, hey, why don't you go to this? You should. And then Jason would be like, a lot of people suggested I invite you, and I did, and you didn't come. And I was just like, okay, well, you know, a lot of people I like go to this thing. And so then I showed up and I was like, oh man, I should have been going to these since the beginning. So it's definitely one of the best events. Now, so that said, no, it couldn't have been Toronto because I was like scared of it back then. But I definitely went to all of the ones in California. It must have been 2014 or something like that, or 2015, maybe. I don't know.
Anyways, we met through Jason. So I met a lot of really interesting people through Mastermind Talks. So if anybody wants to check out Mastermind Talks, like you said, it's like really exclusive entrepreneur, really cool people. That's the thing I love about the Mastermind Talks community, and just those types of entrepreneurs and authors and writers or whatever. In cryptocurrency, in Bitcoin, I've been able to network with people because I've been in Bitcoin since 2011. So I know a lot of the people that are behind the scenes running different coins and running different companies and all this, because a lot of people that were early in Bitcoin ended up going off launching their own cryptocurrency. And anyways, I met a lot of them. And then in the 2017 bubble, it was just like, I felt like my morals were kind of being challenged, and like I was bending my morals and things like that, because it was like this crypto space was just such a bad influence. I don't know. It was just like...
Wait. I want to hear about this. So why did you think it was a bad influence? And do you mean on everyone or just you?
Well, the whole, I got into Bitcoin because of my morals, right? Because of my...
Well, you're like a Canadian prepper. Is that fair?
I'm like anti-authoritarian or whatever you call that. Yeah. Like I don't like the idea of the government controlling every aspect of your life and then stealing your money through taxation that they use to go bomb people overseas, and then stealing your money through inflation by tripling the money supply over 10, 15 years, which punishes people who save money their whole life. So I don't like that, and the idea of money being backed by nothing. And then when I realized that there was nothing backing money and they just print it, and it's like the government's friends that are printing the money.
How much did that freak you out?
My life changed. I became a conspiracy theory guy. I started listening to Alex Jones. I was like,
oh, man.
nothing in life is real.
And
like the money doesn't exist.
Gay. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no gold in Fort Knox. No, there's nothing backing the dollar. So I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what's really going on then? If that thing that was a part of my life, so much money, was a big lie, like what else was a big lie? That's the rabbit hole I went down, and I wasted a lot of time and energy. But I grew up Mormon, so I was...
That's interesting.
So I was very gullible. I thought everybody was good and like people are kind and all that stuff. So I was instilled with this sense of morals that, you got to be honest, treat your body like a temple, you got to pay your tithing, you can't cheat, so I couldn't even drink root beer. So I wasn't thinking about...
Wait, why not root beer?
Because it's a dark pop.
You can't drink dark frickin' pop soda?
Well, it's weird because I grew up on the east coast of Canada, and the Mormons on the east coast of Canada thought you couldn't drink caffeine when dark pop.
But root beer's caffeine free. Loophole, baby.
I know. After I figured out that the money wasn't real, I figured out that I could have been drinking root beer my whole life.
It's so sad that you missed root beer as a kid. Like the whole thinking people were kind and having the real world pop that bubble. That's a bummer. But no root beer, man. I'm tearing up over here, buddy.
but I did have root beer. I went against it there. My grandmother would always take me to A&W, and I'd love the root beer.
How good?
There because
oh my god, the place is amazing. The floats,
it's amazing. Oh yeah, the floats. The teen burgers.
I want to go back, though, to, because your listeners are like, I hate when he talks about his root beer deprived childhood, right? They've heard this before.
I don't think I ever said that before on the show.
I do think it's interesting, though, that you came out of a strong religious background or culture, and then you got into, you basically... It seems like this happens a lot too from people that I know who are formerly religious. They often have like a couple intermittent stops. Let's say you're a skeptic, which maybe you are now, although you said conspiracy theory, which is the opposite of skeptic, but maybe that was in the past. But let's say like a lot of people who come from strong belief systems as a kid, I've found, and science is starting to sort of be able to show maybe why this is, the science of belief, that you have a couple intermittent stops once you leave, because a lot of folks think, oh, I started as a Mormon and then I became this like sort of rebellious free thinker and ... Now I'm either an atheist or I'm just not Mormon or not religious. It doesn't matter if you're Mormon or not religious. And I'm like, oh, interesting. But that's not really how a lot of these seem to go. It often seems to go from, I have questions about being Jehovah's Witness or Christian or like strong Muslim. And then it's like, then they go and they join like a yoga cult thing, but it's not really like not super severely cult, but has culty underpinnings. And then they get a job at like a multi-level marketing thing, which is a business cult essentially.
Right. Yeah.
And then they come out through there and they go, oh, well, okay, now they go down a couple conspiracy rabbit holes. Then they maybe get a regular job because the MLM thing's
Get
not
out of
working.
my mind, Mr. Harbinger.
Yeah. And then suddenly they're like, skeptics. And then they're like, well, okay, if the God that I grew up with is something that I don't necessarily believe in as much anymore, or the scripture or the cultural stuff or the, can't drink caffeine or you're going to hell type stuff. I don't really know if that's a belief, by the way. And then you go, and the conspiracy stuff's not real. then everything that I thought I knew before I should question. Like, why are people who didn't grow up religious so confident that these fancy papers they're giving to people are actually valuable? Like, you start questioning the root of everything because you've already had one of the core tenets of your identity that you have questioned. Does this make sense? Like, you questioned that thing that you were told was never an option to be questioned, I assume, growing up. And so it's like, well, why the hell is money sacred then, everyone?
Yeah, and I did have all those stops too that you mentioned. Like I was at the point where when you turn 19 in the Mormon faith, you have to go on a mission.
That seems cool, by the way.
It was kind of interesting, but the rules were so strict. Like, I knew the missionaries I was always around missionaries.
Oh,
and they're all so goody two-shoe. Like,
yeah,
they wouldn't even be watching Jim Carrey movies. You know what I mean? Like, I was really into comedy. I was writing funny songs. And when I was younger, I was like, I got a computer. So I'm still a Mormon, but I got a computer. I'm on IRC. And I'm like writing scripts and hacking into people's computers and stuff because it's a fun joke.
Totally. Well, and you're like 14, so you don't care if it's illegal. It's not.
Yeah,
you're not
13, 14. I don't know about the laws or whatever. I'm not drinking root beer, so I'm a good person. I'm going to go to heaven, but I'm also just listening to these people have an argument over their computer microphone that I hacked.
Oh, that's so, dude. That makes total sense. Yeah, you throw NetBus on there. You remember that? And then
I think that was the one. Was that the one where it was like there was like a teddy bear icon? You had to social engineer somebody to get them to open the game.
Yeah, you'd email attach it. It was like 5 megs or whatever. And then you'd be like, check this out. This is hilarious. And people would be like, oh, it didn't do anything. And you're like, shrug. Oh, never mind. It doesn't work on some people's computers. And then you can like open their CD.
Open their CD drive.
And it'll say like, have a Coke. Here's a cup holder. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember that was just so fun. And it was like, I was also at the same time doing that. I was like taking pop songs and rewriting them and making them silly and recording them and making silly like animations and stuff.
You're like Weird Al.
Yeah, I was like trying to like rebel against the strict Mormon stuff while still being a good person. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't trying to be doing drugs, and I still don't swear. Really?
What do you say? Like, dang nabbit, I stubbed my toe. Do you do that?
It's just a habit that stuck with me through the years. I'll say like shit.
Okay, well that technically counts as swearing. You know, I believe. I might have to Google it, but that's like the classic example. So you do swear, you just don't drop F-bombs all the time or something.
With the Mormon religion, they have bad game theory. In one way, it's good game theory, and in a higher level, it's bad game theory. Because I still value some of the things I learned about like family values and morals and like helping people, things like that. The foundational stuff about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was like a good foundation to make a good person. And I still value that, but it was all the other stuff. It was like I couldn't even watch funny movies. I couldn't go to the theater without having to repent. And
that's
like,
insane.
This is annoying. So it got to the point where it was like 19 years old, and I was already doing sketch comedies and, you know, like really into comedy, and did not want to go on a mission because I'm like, I'd rather go to Toronto and go to comedy school, go to college, learn how to write screenplays and just enjoy my life rather than go to like a developing nation and like read the Bible all day long and try to convince people to join the Mormon religion. That doesn't sound...
Yeah. You could join the Peace Corps instead. You get all the stuff you were going to get without like cramming Jesus down people's throats if they don't want it.
But the thing that I rationalized my way out of the Mormon religion was because of the bad game theory that they have.
Yeah, explain this.
There's three levels of heaven in the Mormon religion. There's the celestial, the terrestrial, and the telestial. And you have to be like the most goody two-shoes, most holy, wear the magic underwear Mormon, get baptized in the temple, get sealed for life with your family and your spouse, like the full-on Mormon experience. And if you do that, you can live in the top level of heaven with like the angels and God and Jesus and all that. And then if you're not that level, but you're very much dedicated to the religion, you don't drink root beer, whatever it is, you can live like in the second tier of heaven. You won't be able to go up and see Jesus and God, but you're not going to burn in the eternal hellfires, and you'll be able to be with your family. So that's pretty cool. But then there's the third level of heaven, which is just like Earth. That's the way they sell it. It's just like Earth. And then there's hell. outer darkness. And I'm like, well, and they tell you, like it's just like how Bernie Sanders would go on late night shows, and when they'd ask him if Joe Biden could win against Trump, he'd be like, oh yeah, he's a friend of mine. He could win against Trump. It'd be like, well, that's bad game theory there, Bernie, because now people don't even need to vote for you because you just said that Biden can beat Trump. So, so the Mormons would like tell you that, oh yeah, other people in other religions, they're not going to go to hell as long as they're good people. You know, you could still perform crimes and do things like that, but if you repent and if you're a good person in your heart, then you'll go to heaven. You just won't be able to go up to the top heaven. So I'm like thinking here, I'm like a teenager. I'm like, well, shit, I can have like a really interesting life and not have to dedicate it to all this religious stuff, and I'm still not going to go to hell, where all the other religions were saying you're going to go to hell unless you're so I was like, shit, I'm just going to opt out. I'll take the terrestrial heaven. I'll take the third tier of heaven. I'll just be a good person. If this is all real, you know, if this religion is real, then why am I going to waste my whole life on earth trying to like win top level heaven? I'll just take third level heaven and then forget about the religion.
Right. It's like if somebody offers you 10 million, you don't have to do anything. But if you really work hard and have all this luck, you can get 100 million. You're like, I'll take this. I'll take the safe 10. You know, I'll take the safe 10. I'll throw it in an index fund, obviously buy some crypto, and then we're good. You know, we are good. Yeah, I'm just going to live on that interest, baby.
So I wasn't actually one of those people that was like, oh, it's a big lie. I just opted out and I was like, well, I'm going to go to at least the third level of heaven. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, why not? Hey, by the way, I wanted to ask you, and if you've covered this on the show, then we can skip right over it, but all these crypto banks that are coming out now where they're like, give us all of your Bitcoin and we'll pay you interest in Bitcoin. Have you covered this?
I haven't talked about it, no. So maybe it's a good idea.
I mean, do you know about this? Because I barely do. I just know people keep recommending it. And I'm like, this is like giving money to a bank in like Panama, or maybe not Panama, or maybe in like the Honduras, where you're just like, oh, they're giving me a really good deal and a really good interest rate. And then you come back a month later and it's like, we're closed. And you have all my money. What do you mean you're closed? Where do I get my money? And it's like, oh, the guy who ran it is a guy who's behind a shell company in Cayman. So good luck getting your Bitcoin back, dude.
Well, that's actually one of the things I was talking about when I said I felt like my morals are being compromised by the crypto scene, because I came into this because of financial sovereignty. Like Bitcoin is owning your own keys, and owning your Bitcoin is the one way that you can have real sovereignty and own your own wealth without any middlemen, right? Without a bank in the way, or the government in the way, or some company in the way that can censor you or get involved in your transactions or even know what you're transacting.
Oh, dude, I got a story about that. We'll come back to it. Chase took some of my money for... I'm getting fired up. Anyway, yeah, so I didn't mean to interrupt you here, but I guess you articulated my point better than I would have, which is not only could it be fly by night, but if I'm buying cryptocurrency partially because of financial sovereignty and also because I'm an idiot who had FOMO and just spent way too much money on crypto, but hey, it worked out. Why would I then put a shadier, less stable company between me and my funds when it's like, talk about bad game theory. If with Wells Fargo, at least I can walk in there and be super freaking annoying until they give me a check or tell me what's going on. But if this is just a website, like it's like letting a drug dealer hold all of your money instead of putting it in a bank. It's like, which one is worse? I don't know, but at least I know where the bank branch is and I can never get a hold of Calvin.
Calvin Air?
My drug dealer.
Oh, yeah, okay. So there's 3 levels of risk here. There's the top level of risk. So we'll do this like the Mormon heavens, right? There's like the absolute scams at the bottom, right? And those are the ones that are, deposit your Bitcoin, we'll double it. Like the Twitter hack that just happened the other day. They're like, send us Bill Gates and like
do you
Trump
think that was a scam or a state actor attack against?
I think, what is it? Occam's razor, where the simplest explanation is probably the likely one.
Uh-huh.
I think it was likely some young person in their 20s or something that figured out access to the Twitter user management tool, and they started by sending out a tweet from a crypto account saying, like, trying to scam Bitcoin as a joke, and then they realized they had access to all the blue checks, and they started with crypto, and then they went to the bigger crypto accounts, and they went to the regular celebrities, and then Trump and all that. So I do think that it was just a young kid like screwing around trying to get some Bitcoin like for the lulls. I don't think it was a state level attack unless they're very sophisticated and made it seem like they were so dumb that they were trying to scam Bitcoin.
So you just totally changed my mind on this, because I at first was like, these are state actors, da-da-da. But now I heard that they bribed somebody inside Twitter to get access. So that's possibly a thing. But if they started with crypto accounts and then they just worked their way up the chain, that sort of confirms what I had thought before I had heard about what I thought was a complex attack, but turned out to just be a bribe to somebody, from what I understand. Because you're right, you don't start with crypto accounts and scam Bitcoin and then go to the top accounts and scam Bitcoin if you don't just want some dang Bitcoin. You could, I thought, they're testing vulnerabilities, they're trying to do something to destabilize these personalities. But if they started with small time crypto accounts, yeah, these are people that just worked on their scam and then went, who's got the most followers and the most news attention right now? Oh, right. Joe Biden. And people go, why didn't they do it with Trump's account? Well, because they don't want the Secret Service coming after them or the NSA for attacking the president or the office of the president. They went to the next best thing.
I thought Trump actually did tweet, so they didn't do Trump.
I heard that they did not, but that could be erroneous. I didn't look into it too much. I mean, I think you're right. It seems like you're right. There's probably some young people who thought they were going to get a couple $1 million in Bitcoin or whatever.
Or even just young people who were just screwing around, just having fun, like, oh, look, we got access to this, all the biggest accounts. It's a thrill. It's a rush. It's the same as when we were like 13-year-old kids trying to like get people to install the Teddy Bear app and the NetBus. Yeah. And just for the fun of it, like you didn't have malicious intent when you're young and doing this. You're just screwing around. And I can even rationalize it as, because it's bad that they scammed money from people, but you could even rationalize that as just some dumb kid that doesn't value things yet.
Sure.
Like if it was a young kid that just maybe don't value hard-earned money or whatever, and they just think this is magic internet money, people are going to send it to me. Like, why not? It's just a fun joke. But we'll see.
Well, federal crime now, and then also, can't they look at the ledger for Bitcoin and sort of track this, or can you sort of launder Bitcoin? I've heard you can do both, but I don't know how accurate that is.
Bitcoin is transparent. It's a transparent ledger. So if you do something that's like this level stupid, the courts are going to go after the IP records of the internet provider. And like anytime that Bitcoin moves to any exchange, the exchanges are going to be giving all the information to the FBI and everything. There's no way, I don't think, that those people can actually get that Bitcoin to dollars safely. But like, if you're just buying marijuana off a darknet or something like that, the judge is not. The cops are not going to go after a judge to get a warrant for your IP address logs if you're just buying $50 worth of pot or something off a dark market.
Right. Could you transfer this to a Russian ledger or something, or a Chinese exchange or something like that?
Yeah, you could peer-to-peer swap it with somebody in another jurisdiction that doesn't respect the U.S. laws, or like a North Korean or something like that doesn't respect the U.S. sanctions. Like, but then if they ever find out who did it and they're getting that deep in it, then they're going to get shit.
You're right. That's even more dangerous to transfer it to a sanctioned country. I mean, you could probably. There are countries that aren't sanctioned that don't respect U.S. banking laws. Like, I would imagine you could bring this to Singapore or something like that, or Macau, and then you could take it out in cash.
What was it, like 15 Bitcoin or something in the end that they got?
I mean, that's such jack squat money.
Yeah, they might as well just sit on it for 20 years and just
I think
get back to life.
Last I read, they only got like $100,000, but that was early in the day of the hack. That said, it was a pretty obvious bungle in so many ways that it's like, how many people are going to have a 10,000 or whatever dollar Bitcoin to flip at what is so obviously a Joe Biden hacked Twitter, and immediately made the New York Times like front page of the website within hours. Like somebody would have looked at that. I'm sure people flipped them a few $100, but sophisticated actors with a lot of money probably didn't.
So we'll go back, because that's the first layer scam. There's scams like that, and then there's also scams that are more sophisticated. They'll create fake accounts and advertise on YouTube. I've been seeing people advertising on YouTube that Elon Musk is giving Bitcoin away in this bank,
this Bitcoin scam?
Bank. And
I mean, that's the same scam.
Similar scam. This has been around since 2017. During the bubble in 2017, people started doing a little bit of like a bot farming, crypto scamming on Twitter, and they would post an address and say first they'd make up some reason to say, oh, if you deposit, we'll double your Bitcoin or your Ethereum or whatever the cryptocurrency was, or we'll give you 5% a day or something like that. And it's just FOMO, and it's taking advantage of people who are easily duped, and people fall for it. And then they started doing when the 0-day exploits got leaked that the NSA were keeping secret in 2017, people started making ransomware and exploiting 0-day exploits, locking everybody's files up, like hospitals and all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember that. Was that the WannaCry ransomware?
I think WannaCry, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was this 0-day exploit that the NSA had that they just weren't telling Microsoft or anybody about. And it was super dangerous for them to not disclose that they had these 0-day exploits. And then somebody leaked it. So they got hacked. The NSA got hacked, and hackers leaked it. They wanted to get $1 million, I think it was, in Bitcoin. Otherwise, they're going to release it. Nobody paid, so they released it. And then people started making all these ransomwares. And that's when you get that's also scam, right? That's like sophisticated scams.
That also seems suspicious to me, because who the hell goes, I want $1 million? It reminds me of Dr. Evil. Dr. Evil. We're going to ask Microsoft, this $70 billion company or whatever it's worth. We want $1 million. And it's like, no. You want 10 because that's the level at which an executive can go, just make this go away, right? Like, they could do that. They probably have a titanium or black Amex card somewhere in their glove compartment that can they can make a quick call and get that transaction approved for the Bitcoin with the card. Like, just do it. So asking for $1 million, that's so silly to me.
Well, what they did was they just put up an address, and they were just like, they were pretty much talking to the government, and they were saying, give us $1 million. They don't care who it was. It wasn't like Microsoft had to pay. Or they just said, we want $1 million for this Bitcoin address. Otherwise, this stuff is getting dropped. And it did drop. And then it was funny because Microsoft had stealth released a patch about a week before. So Microsoft was in on it somehow. They knew. They got the information somehow that this was about to happen. And they, who knows?
NSA probably had to go, so here's the thing.
Right.
And you should fix this immediately, because otherwise it's going to be a massive problem. And they were like, great, stealth patch.
Yeah.
By then, NSA already knew the cat was out of the bag.
And most people don't update their software, so it was affecting a lot of businesses and stuff. But in 2017, a lot of those scammy stuff started to happen. And then in 2019, you probably got these spam emails. It's like, these email bot farms, whatever, just started mass sending out emails saying oh, we caught you masturbating on camera, and we need to get some money, otherwise we're gonna release this to all your contacts.
I know. I got a lot of friends being like, hey, can I call you? And I'm like, why? And I go, and after a while I started to realize that people so they would go, can I call you? This is kind of important. And then they'd be like, so this is really embarrassing, but we've been friends for years. And they would tell me all about what was going on. And I was like, relax, dude. You're safe. This is a scam.
Not real.
It's not real. And they were like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And I'm like, dude,
it was effective.
It was really effective, because people were
really emotionally manipulative.
I had buddies that were like, "Okay, I mean, real talk. If you found out that I watched," and they would list off the types of porn, and would you be weirded out by that? And I was like, "Your secret's safe with me that you cosplay." Specifically Asian feline cosplay porn. I'm fine with that. I don't think anyone's going to believe it anyway. And they're like, cool. That's what I was kind of hoping. Meanwhile, I'm like, it's a prank. You don't have to tell me all the weird shit you've watched in the last 90 days.
What I would do actually is because I would get one of those every week, and I would look at the Bitcoin address, and I'd see people are sending Bitcoins in there. It's unfortunate. People get scammed so easily. And I would get people start to message me, be like, hey, I need to buy $100 of Bitcoin off you. And I'm like,
Yeah, oh, really? Why's that? Tell me why.
You kind of understand why when this spammy trend is happening.
Is that still going, I wonder? Are people still doing it?
It is, and people are still falling for it. And the other big one, too, is the CRA IRS scam, where they'll call you with a robocall saying, you are about to be arrested for not paying your taxes. Please pay us in the Bitcoin.
Yeah, go to Target and buy gift cards to pay your taxes to the IRS. What? No.
My sister actually called me up in a panic, thinking she was about to be arrested.
That's sad.
And she was anxious and seriously, she had just gotten back from a trip she's a documentary filmmaker, and she just got back from a trip from this like remote island where she was filming these wild horses and stuff. And this a scientist, I think she's a botanist or something. She's lived there for 25 years and doesn't leave the island. There's no internet. There's nothing there.
Oh, so she's not up on all this like crap.
No, my sister went to the island to film.
Oh, got it.
Woman.
Oh, okay. I thought your sister was. I was like, your whole family is sort of unique people, huh?
No, she went to film this woman, and she was away for a month.
Got it.
And then when she got back, she had these messages from the CRA scammers saying that she owed her taxes. And the shitty thing is that she was actually under an audit at the time from the CRA. And the CRA in Canada is brutal, and they audit like tons of people. People get audited all the time. So this scam is even more effective because they call up pretending to be relating to the audit, and chances are there's going to be an audit at some point in someone's life for their taxes. So they get extra credit for the scam because people are like, oh crap, like this is real. I'm actually going to be arrested. And then they start trying to find a Bitcoin ATM and try to pay Bitcoin. I mean, it got so bad that the RCMP had to go to all the Bitcoin ATMs and hang up posters saying the CRA will never ask you to pay for your taxes in Bitcoin.
Oh, that's actually good that they did that, because they could have just played along, or they could have gone down the road of like, ooh, see, Bitcoin's dangerous, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like what some of the mainstream news ran with the story after the Twitter hack was like the Bitcoin scam and like the scammers of Bitcoin and all this, rather than like when a big bank gets caught money laundering billions of dollars for a Mexican drug cartel, they don't say the US dollar scam.
No.
The fiat, the
Wells Fargo scam. Yeah, the HSBC scam. No, we don't hear about that. We hear about
and when you do hear about it, they don't blame it on the US dollar and say, oh, we don't need you. We shouldn't have US dollars because look at what these banks did to launder money for the drug cartels. So we should ban Bitcoin and US dollars because it's all being used.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It's like, see, there's no recourse. It's like, so if I give somebody a few grand in cash, I have recourse. Tell me what recourse I have. I'm waiting. I'll wait. Right.
Right. Yeah. So those are like the obvious scams. That's not really related to Bitcoin banks, but some of it is. But then there's the crypto banks where you deposit your Ethereum or whatever. And this is the one that you're probably getting hit up on now, the DeFi banking stuff. And that's what really I felt morally compromised when I was participating in that stuff. Like I was trying to make more Bitcoin. So I'm investing in things that aren't philosophically aligned. It's like I want more Bitcoin, but this market is booming. I'm not just going to sit on my hands while all these people are investing in these things and getting crazy returns off it. So I want more Bitcoin. I'm going to invest in this too. And then it's just turned into like a total shit show. Anybody who was in this 2017 crypto investing stuff is wrecked for the most part if they held the stuff that they were investing in.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like I thought that the 2018-19 bear market actually proved that all this stuff was garbage and it was bad investments. But it's 3 years on and it's starting again, like the bubble's starting over, but with this banking stuff. Yeah, it's like they're trying to build banks on crypto and they're juicing the returns almost like these. It's almost like a scam. It's not quite a scam, but it's almost like a scam. And it's like, deposit your crypto into this DeFi protocol and you'll earn 50% annual interest on it. It's like, what the hell? Like, how does that make any sense? How are people falling for this?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And you're right, it is a tremendous return. I think it was like 10 or 12%. And I was like,
a month?
No, it's annualized, but that's better than an index fund for essentially what is savings of crypto, which makes no sense. I mean, it only works if crypto continues to appreciate it greater than the amount of the return.
Well, okay, so then that's the level of least scammy, least risky. So there's like the most risky is just replying to some dude's tweet that says send Bitcoin to this address and we'll give you 50%. That's the most risky. Or, send Bitcoin to us. Otherwise, we're going to release all the videos we have of you.
Yeah.
That's a scam. But then there's super high risk, almost scam crypto banking stuff, which is VC funded companies. They have like 10, 20 million in the bank, and they're trying to like make it appear like there's a return. So they're just paying for it out of their bank account, and it's almost like high-speed trading.
It's like a Ponzi scheme, right? It's like what Madoff was doing. Here's your fake return that I'm just manufacturing.
Yeah, except they're not guaranteeing return. It's a market return, so it's floating. So they suck people in with these high returns, 50% annualized return or something like that, and you get paid out in these shitcoin tokens, and then those shitcoin tokens go down in value, and the VCs stop giving shitcoin tokens. So then the return eventually will trend to zero,
right?
Like regular interest rates will, once it's efficient. But it's just super inefficient right now, and it's only like 1,000 people that are playing with these protocols, these cryptocurrency DeFi protocols. So most of it is just whales and quants and math people like trading with each other, and it's juicing the returns to make it look so appealing. But I'm hearing really smart people, like even people from MMT, high net worth individuals, coming to me saying like, should I buy this DeFi thing because it's got like a 50% return? I want to get a 50% return. And I'm just like, oh man, this is like the 2017 bubble starting all over again.
Yeah. The 2017 was interesting because it was one of those times where if you knew a little like how to buy Bitcoin without getting totally hosed and like transfer some money into an account, to get it to an exchange to buy, and then you sat on Bitcoin, you did okay. Like you probably did okay. But if you were like me and you're like, ooh, I know a lot about this stuff. Let me find some winners. Oh, cool. You know an inside person at this. And then after like a couple weeks or a month, I was like, oh, all these people that claim to know somebody inside something, they don't. And the ones that seemed like they did because they were right about the appreciation of whatever shitcoin I had ended up investing in, then it was like, oh, that went up because everything's going up. So it took me like a month or 2 or 3 to figure out that everybody was a genius, that whole everybody's a genius thing. And like that some of these things were going up just because everything was going up, not because the fundamentals were sound. And then I started talking with like you and do you know Amir Rosic and stuff? Do you know that guy? Yeah. And he's a nice guy. And then Dima Buterin and like other folks in our circle. And they were just like, here's the truth. Here's what's going on. And I was like, crap, I wish I'd talked to you a few months ago because now I'm holding like, Kickcoin and like all this garbage that I later sold, of course, at a loss. And then I looked at my returns and I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to see this. I'm going to cry because I probably invested, if I invested like multiple 6 figures. I wonder if I lost like 100 grand. I was still up. And I was like, how am I still up? And the answer is I bought a lot of stuff and I sold it at like I lost on everything except for the stuff where I had like a 72x return or like a 19x return. Yeah. And then I sold that and turned it into Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin went up. And so I'm like up like 20 grand, but I totally lost like 120 grand and then went up, to 130 from 120. So I ended up getting lucky, basically.
That's most people, man. That's most people's stories. And that's why I always recommend people that I don't even talk to them about altcoins or this DeFi stuff because it's just a way to like suck you into the casino.
Yes.
And if you don't realize that the cards are stacked against you, you're going to become a bag holder in these coins and you're going to lose money. Statistically, the majority of them go down like 90%. So I just morally, philosophically, like my activist inside of me is just like Bitcoin only. But then there's a part of me that's like the capitalist, right? That's like, I also want to get a return. I'm seeing people get returns. I'm in the space. I've got like, friends that are launching coins and all this stuff. So it's very hard to like resist that stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I've definitely resisted shilling stuff to regular people. And that's the thing I think that's kind of kept me safe and kept me feeling good about myself because I didn't go out and start tweeting about all these other coins and like pump and dumping and all this stuff that a lot of people did in 2017, 18. I just stuck with Bitcoin only. So I'm like a Bitcoiner on the streets and a shitcoiner in the sheets. So I'm okay.
Yeah. That's really funny. Dude,
I'm okay to lose my own money. I don't want to get my other friends and stuff losing money. And I don't want the regulators coming after me being like, you're promoting unregistered securities.
Sure. Or you're just a con man because they don't have to get you on the securities thing. If you're doing something that is going to go down and is by design not going to get the returns you're talking about, then it's still fraud. it's still fraud if they really want to come after you for that.
I think so. I think it is. And like, I'm fine investing my own money into that. Like, I'll take a small percentage of my portfolio and gamble with it because it really is gambling. And like, I'll invest in some of these things, hold them for a year or something. Maybe it's up, maybe it's not, but it's like just a hobby, really. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't recommend anybody do it because usually people can't limit themselves and then they'll start putting all their Bitcoin. Like, they'll be early in Bitcoin. I think we're still early. And it'll suck to be so early in Bitcoin, but then get called in by the siren song of 10x returns from Coinbase coins. And then you sell all your Bitcoin for all these shit coins and you just don't realize how to manage risk. And then turns out Bitcoin goes up to like 100,000 over a couple of years or something. And you're stuck holding this worthless dog sitting coin.
Yeah.
That's meant for like babysitting dogs. Like that's not going to work. Or even loan issuing coins. Like now the big thing is like, loan coins and like decentralized bank coins and all this stuff that you're hearing about, that stuff's probably going to get shut down by the SEC or the CFTC or somebody, and it's going to probably go down 96%, just like all the other stuff. So it's just fads, right? I don't recommend people mess around with those unless they're just like capping themselves.
That makes sense. I would imagine that there's attempts to move every industry that's heavily regulated because it's crappy. So I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but payday loans, kind of, like those people that pay like 100% interest because it's really 10% interest, but it's monthly, and there's like loan origination fees and there's loan maintenance fees, and it's like you can spend 3 times the amount of the money you borrowed to pay like your phone bill, and you've still paid off $0 of the principal because payday loans are structured so predatorily, if that's a word. and so I can imagine that just going to crypto because sometimes those people want bigger loans, but they can't be legally given, and this and that and the other thing. So they're just like, we're just going to put this on the blockchain and make it really, really, really difficult for regulators to come after us. Or we're going to tell you that's what we're doing, and then people invest in it, and then we just take the money in Bitcoin and run, and then
or they just maybe they don't even run. Maybe what they're doing is they're just using that business model, just like how Long Island Iced Tea slapped the word blockchain on their name, and then their stock went way up, in 2017. Like, they're just taking the loan thing, and this technology is open source, so a lot of it exists. You can just fork it, spend $100,000 on marketing, get some influential people, give them some coins and get them to tweet about it. And then all of a sudden your payday loans on a blockchain and you'll raise $10 million from VCs and retail. And then you don't even have to scam. You just got their $10 million. Now it's like the coin goes to shit. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have any legal liability to them because they're not shareholders. They're just token owners.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So they don't even have to exit scam. Raising the money and dropping this token on the market is the scam, in my opinion, and a lot of Bitcoiners' opinions.
Right. And since you're just getting investors, they assume the risk. It's going to be tough for them to go to a court and go, turned out this was never designed to succeed. And they'll be like, oh, you mean like every app you've invested in, including the ones that did succeed? Cry me a river, billionaire. Bye.
There is a bunch of class action lawsuits and lawsuits happening where the big risk for these altcoins and DeFi protocols and all this is not necessarily the regulators are going to shut them down now, because there's just so much of it. It's kind of too much for the regulators to try to like deal with the traditional way, where they find a scam that's like using fake numbers or whatever, and then they go after them, they find them, they cease and desist them. But there's thousands of these things in the crypto space now. So I think the regulators actually got overwhelmed. So just because these protocols or ICOs and whatnot aren't going to be shut down by the regulators doesn't mean that they're not going to get sued by the investors who lost their money. And that's the thing that we're seeing now. There's like ambulance chasing like blockchain lawyers are like setting up practices just like, did you invest in an ICO? Contact me, your must-see trustee for ICO recovery. It's just like,
Is that real?
I just made that up.
That was
but
pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good.
people, someone can use that if somebody wants to be the must-see trustee for ICO recovery.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, I've definitely, it's weird with this, and I'm sure that everyone can identify with this, and so stop me if this has been covered a million times, but I gotta say, there was a lot back in 2017 of like, hey, Jordan, here's your return of 130 Ethereum. By the way, I've got this other deal. You should give me like half of this return and I'll put it in this other thing. And I'll go, cool, what is it? And they'll go, it's going to be great. And I'm like, sure, here's 30 Ethereum, for it. And they'll be like, 30? Come on, man. Winston put in 300. And I'll be like, all right, fine, here's 60. And then like months later, I'm like, what happened to that? And they're like, oh yeah, that turned out to be a scam. And I'm like, how much? Let me do the math on that. Whoa, I gave you like $15,000. And they're like, yeah, cool. Anyway, I got to go walk the dog. And I'm like, what was I thinking? I gave this guy $15,000 that I've never met over like WhatsApp because he just gave me like $40,000 to a guy that he didn't know on WhatsApp, and on this other thing that turned out to probably also be a scam for somebody else, but for us worked out, and I don't even understand what it was. And it was like, I had a buddy, dude, who I won't name check him. He easily lost $5 million in crypto.
Oh, geez.
And it was because when I finally stopped and went, it's hard to get money into the market, and I'm just going to keep Bitcoin because guys like you were like, dude, this is like insanity right now, Tulip Mania, whatever. And all these ICOs are all garbage. And like, I stopped understanding even in the least what I was looking at, which is not good for investing. This guy, he was like in all these private group buy chats, where there's a spreadsheet of 92 ICOs and they're all buying all of them or as many as they can afford. And he would put in like, 50 grand into like 20 different things or 25 grand into 20 different things. And that's like a week for him. And then he eventually just sold all of them at the bottom because they were all garbage.
Yeah.
I felt really bad for him,
Yeah, well, hopefully he held some Bitcoin and he's long-term Bitcoin, because even if, like, there's a lot of people that are still up. They did the same thing in that 2017. It was like people in the regular markets are getting like 10% return a year or something if they're lucky, if they got a good strategy. But like crypto people were measuring their results in X's, not percents. So it was like, I want a 10X, not a 10%. So people were doing that. It was nuts. It was like, how many billions of dollars got invested by Wall Street and VCs and high net worth people, accredited investors that wanted to come in and capture that? Well, during that few month period, there was some insane returns of like 100x, 50x here, 50x there. And you got like guys like John McAfee and stuff started to shill coins, coin of the day type of thing, taking a coin from like 1 cent to $1 just because his Twitter account said to buy it. So even people who got into that, like were investing, like spray and pray investing into just whatever, because it was just FOMO. It was just all FOMO at that point. They probably came out okay because at least if they had some Bitcoin or sold some of those returns. But it became so insane that I just remember I was like barely sleeping trying to keep up with all this stuff that was happening and new projects that were coming out. And people were like, yeah, it was like this guy, Ian Bellina, started this spreadsheet that was like 100 different ICOs. And then he eventually had 5 million or something that he turned $20,000 into 5 million in like a couple of months. And then he got hacked on a live stream and he lost all of his crypto because he was keeping his private keys in Evernote.
Oh, shoot.
So like, and even he's still up. Like even he got hacked. He lost everything. All of the shit coins that he was investing in went down, and he's still up. So
unbelievable.
So yeah, there was a lot of loss, and a lot of it was like fake because of these prices were going up, but the volume was just barely there. So it was like manipulated prices, and whales were just not selling their coins, and then people were FOMOing in, which means that there's a lot of pressure on the price to go up. And even Ethereum itself, it went up to like $1,500 or something. And it's because a significant majority of the supply of Ethereum was they did a 70% pre-mine. So it's all the whales, the Ethereum whales are holding onto their Ethereum. And then they're investing into these Ethereum ICOs, right? Everybody was investing their ETH into these ICOs, and then the ICO companies are raising like 100,000, 200,000 ETH. They're holding on to their ETH, right? So all the supply was being taken off the market, which caused the prices to all go up because people were not selling their ETH, they were investing it into ICOs. And then the ICO companies were holding on to it because they're seeing their token treasuries go up double in price because they're not selling their ETH.
Oh, wow.
So everybody was just holding their ETH. Everybody was reinvesting incestuously into these ICOs. People were making like 5 or 6 company ICOs, like groups, right? And it was just a factory of just bubble mentality. And then when the rug got pulled out from the market, like in January, February, everything just collapsed, because then you're like, okay, well, I just raised 100,000 Ethereum a month ago, and now it's worth double the price. And then you're seeing the price skyrocket. Well, everybody goes for the exits at once. Everybody starts trying to sell these coins, and that's when we realized, oh wait, there's no depth to this market. There's nothing real here. These people everybody's just trying to sell. It was just like a mass exodus to get out of ETH. And so that's why you saw in the 2018-19 bear market, people that held on to Bitcoin, for sure they went through some suffering. But anybody who held on to these ICOs and altcoins, I mean, that was gut-wrenching. That's like a 90% loss. That's significantly brutal on someone's mindset, and enough to turn people off of Bitcoin and crypto, because Bitcoin gets lumped into all this shenanigans.
That's what happened. You mentioned, I hope your buddy's Bitcoin long. No, I asked him and I said, you should, because you told me, and he goes, should I sell everything? And I said, what are you holding? And he listed, garbage after garbage. And I was like, you can keep like Litecoin and Ethereum. And he's like, and Bitcoin. And he's like, no. And I was like, fine, then sell the Litecoin, sell the Ethereum, just keep Bitcoin. And he goes, you know what? I don't ever want to see this stuff again. He's like, and he wasn't blaming the crypto. He was just beating himself up so hard about, and he's a wealthy guy. Look, anybody loses 5 million, but 5 million stung for him in a way. And he felt like, I think he really got the feeling that he had betrayed himself, which is a crap feeling. Like, it really is a crap feeling. It sucks because it really sort of like saps your confidence in yourself, not just in the markets and things like that. And he also, man, there was a lot of really awkwardly uncomfortable greed as well that happens in a market like that. Like, he wanted to get money into the market. And that's one of the biggest problems people were having then, if you remember, is like, how do I get more than like 50 grand or 30 grand or whatever it is into the market quickly enough? And his buddy was like some kind of broker. And he goes, great, I'm going to send you 200 grand or whatever it was. And you had to buy like certain crypto with it. It wasn't just like, here's some Bitcoin. So he bought, I don't know, like EOS or something. And it went up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And he's like, give me my EOS, give me my EOS. And the guy's like, I'm on vacation, but you're going to want to hold this anyway. I'll have my assistant transfer it to you. And then the guy just ghosted him. EOS tanks. And he's like, dude, you kept my EOS from me. I could have sold it. What the hell? We've been friends for 10 years. Like, what's your deal? And the guy was just like, sorry, here's like 30 Ethereum or something like that.
Oh my God.
And he's like, you lost me what it could have been like $16 million an opportunity cost, and you just gave me like 10 grand,
Jeez.
And this is like his buddy. So it's not like, oh, I got burned by some random broker. It's like, oh, wait a minute. My friend the entire time probably bought the EOS, possibly bought it and sold it at the right time using my money. And then just like,
yeah, that's shady.
Yeah.
If the guy actually did that. The thing was, though, like, I can put myself in both sides of that argument and see, like, at that time, it was so fast. The prices were moving up so fast that if you weren't really near your computer and you were gone for a week or something, you could have actually probably sat through a 100x rise and a dump back down without meaning to scam anybody or without, like, selling the top yourself or whatever.
But if you're if you're a cryptocurrency broker, you have someone in your office who can make transactions, or you bring your laptop.
Was he a real broker though, or was he just a dude?
He's a dude who probably became a broker as soon as he decided that he was a broker. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
He wasn't a guy who was into crypto since 2011 and had a financial system set up. He was probably like a frickin' stockbroker who had a side hustle buying crypto with other people's money somehow.
That's why I don't like managing coins for anybody else, especially like friends. Family, I'm okay like helping them hold their keys or holding their keys for them sometimes, or whatever. But I had a bunch of people were like messaging me being like, can I just give you money and you manage it for me? And I was just like, it was very tempting, but I didn't want to have to deal with that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't want people getting mad at me for the prices going down, because I knew how crazy risky this is. And I didn't want friendships falling apart and stuff. And I would give people recommendations if they're coming to me and they're like, listen, I'm gonna be gambling on ICOs. So I'm going to be putting money into ICOs. This is play money for me. If I lose it, I don't care. Then I'd be like, all right, fine. Okay, this is what I'm going to probably look at because it's fundamentally it's shit, but the FOMO's off the charts right now and you could probably double your money on this thing. Mm-hmm. So I would give people recommendations that were legitimately okay seeing that money burn up in flames. And it happened. Like a few friends of mine, one guy put in like 500K or something like that into these ICOs, and he lost like 90% of it. And we're still friends. Like he's not mad at me because I told him straight up, like, this is probably all shit. Like this is a big FOMO bubble, and I'm just gambling with a small percentage of my portfolio. If you want to see what I'm gambling on, here's my slot machine. Here we go. Let's pull. And mostly it was just like, if you weren't paying super close attention to it, you were going to get wrecked because these prices were only up that high for like a month. Mm-hmm. and then it was like lost.
Yeah, it is depressing. And then you see, like, had I just put the money, like I said earlier, if you just knew a little, like how to get Bitcoin, and you were like, I bought Bitcoin, I'm participating, you're up like crazy, right? Because you didn't get screwed.
Not only that, but like you can feel good about it because you're supporting a mission. Like your Bitcoin is most likely to be here in 10 years, much higher. Any of these altcoins, even Ethereum, I'm not convinced that it's going to be around in 5-10 years. So if you're thinking about Bitcoin as like what Ray Dalio talks about, like why he likes gold as a hedge against the collapse of fiat currency, and that sort of level of hedging, right, where you're just afraid of what's happening with all this money printing, and you want to be in other assets like real estate and gold and Bitcoin. I mean, that's what Bitcoin, the conversation should be about, not FOMO, ICO returns, like DeFi percentage, 50% a year gains. And it's unfortunate because it does get all looped into the same thing. So when you're talking about Bitcoin to someone who suffers from FOMO, like I'm a FOMO sapien, I understand it. Mm-hmm. I fall for this stuff too. I mean, I was a Mormon for most of my growing up. I'm gullible. So I will just set myself a rule that this Bitcoin is in cold storage and I'm never going to touch it until 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
Mine's not even conveniently accessible enough. Like I have to go get the Ledger wallet from like the safety deposit box and, get out the encrypted
that's the way to do
documents. It's like, it's the kind of thing, it's almost, it's like more of a pain in the ass than even like savings bonds, right? It's like, I really have to, or equally so. I have to go get it from the place where it is and then take it to an agent that can deal with it at like a certain type of bank. I tried to deposit a savings bond the other day and my bank was like, we don't do these. Go to Wells Fargo.
Brutal.
Yeah, brutal, right? But, FOMO is an interesting concept because a lot of people think they're immune to it because they don't gamble. And that's not really how our brains work. As you probably know from the Jordan Harbinger Show, I talk a lot about psychology, the way our brains work, the way our minds work. I talk to a lot of experts on this subject. And FOMO is like a very natural, evolved concept or thought pattern. So even if you're not hardwired to gamble, like I don't like gambling, but humans gamble in certain ways, they get thrills in certain ways, and they feel like they're missing out on resources. And feeling like you're missing out on resources is a very, very
useful evolutionary tool.
It's useful evolutionary, and it's very alarming to people. It's very, very alarming to people when this happens because you're losing status. Your survival points go down. Your survival rating goes down in your own brain. So you're going to do something about it.
I gotcha. So it's about how you then handle that FOMO and what you do after you feel the feelings of FOMO and recognize that you have that feeling. That probably, I guess, separates the people that end up like following the other lemmings off the cliff or the ones that end up hibernating and surviving the winter, whatever the hell the danger was that the lemmings were running from.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of, it's up there with everyone else is doing something that's going to increase their prosperity and likelihood of survival and reproduction, and you're standing still. What are you going to do? And so you start fighting. You start fighting, and I saw it even in myself where I was like, oh, I have to limit what I'm going to do. I have to decide earlier what my limits are, et cetera. Because I was getting calls while I was on vacation in Sweden at the time with my family. And they were like, dude, you have to get in on this. Send me, send me 20 Ethereum quick. And I'd be like, shit, I don't have any. I need, mine's all invested. Send me 20 Ethereum quick and I'll get you in on like, Blast Coin or whatever the hell it is. And I'm like, great. And I'd like get out a credit card.
Going for demolition teams.
Dude, I literally would get in like a cafe where I'd be like getting a cup of coffee at 7:00 in the morning in Sweden, bust out like my phone and a Visa card, buy Ethereum and send it to a friend. And I remember putting my card away and being like, I'm a freaking idiot. This was there was like fees associated. This is so stupid. It's like stressful. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not doing this anymore. And my friends, I had a other buddy that turned like 40 grand into, $1.8 million and then lost all of it. All of it.
There's so many stories like that, man. It's because everybody thought that the Ethereum price was actually $1,400 or whatever, and that the shitcoin that they bought was actually going to come out at the 50x price that everybody was buying at OTC for. Mm-hmm. And it really was just because it was shit liquidity and whales were holding back the supply, and the people that own all the Ethereum, the pre-mine of the Ethereum, were investing in ICOs. So they were investing their ETH into these ICOs, and they were all constraining the supply. They were holding the supply back, so it was just retail plebs. And there was a lot of retail investors that came in from Coinbase and Bittrex and all these other crypto exchanges. There was like 100,000 people a day coming in at the top of the bubble. So there was some real users coming in. It was crazy FOMO.
Wow.
But none of the prices were real. So yeah, the friend that went from 40K to 1.8 million, he probably couldn't have actually sold the whole 1.8 million if he tried. He probably could have sold maybe like 200K. Like he probably could have actually got liquidity on that. Or if he made the perfect decision, at the very top of the bubble when ETH was maxed out at its high prices, he probably could have got like a 500K or 600K. But I think most of the people were holding altcoins and then looking at the Blockfolio price or whatever and thinking, oh, well, shit, this is worth 50 cents per coin when it's actually on the market. Like nobody's buying it. So when they try to sell it, it actually drops the price 50%. So
oh wow, is it that much liquidity issues? Huh? You can't just cash out something like that. That's crazy.
You can, but some of them, like Blast Coin, for example, right? Like a coin like that, most of the trading was happening in Telegram rooms and spreadsheets and like friends calling each other up, buying and selling it. It wasn't really legitimate volume on the markets, and because it was if it was listed on Binance or one of these exchanges, the teams were hiring market makers to fake volume to make it look like it was super liquid. But then when you actually placed a sizable sell order, they would withdraw the buy walls and the buy support so that the price would actually tank. So something could look like it has $10 million in volume a day, and then you go to sell $500,000 worth of it or something, right? If you got rich off of this ICO, and there's no buyers because it was all fake for the most part. The only other buyers are the dummies that are just like you thinking like, oh shit, I got to buy some of this coin. It's the next Bitcoin. And then they don't have that much money. It's the whales that manipulate the markets that have the actual big bags of money that are simulating the appearance of a deep liquid market. But then 2018-19 showed us liquidity completely dried up. It's just, it's just like a big like scheme to make it look like these shitcoins have $10 million in volume a day. But when you actually go to try to sell some of it, you do wreck the market and the market comes way off.
Jeez. Yeah. I mean, I only have pretty much Bitcoin. I've got like that, the Ethereum you find in your couch cushions after you have a bunch of these crap coins and sell them off.
Yeah. You wake up from your drunken stupor. You're like, oh shit, Ethereum's falling out of your pants.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I have, the stuff that, this was only paired with Ethereum on like one exchange. Guess I'll sell it off and then transfer the Ethereum to my ledger, or whatever. And I've got like 5 Monero or something, or 10, 20, whatever. I don't know, Monero. And then the rest is Bitcoin. And then I have a huge bag of something called ZRX.
Right.
And a lot of people like it. And it was like a favorite for a while. And it still seems to be doing okay. Like it's sort of stably increasing for some reason.
that's an example of one of the second like level Bitcoin bank DeFi things I think is like super high risk and I'm morally opposed to.
What is it? I don't know enough about it.
It's just a complicated exchange protocol token. So this is what Coinbase does. Coinbase is funded by Silicon Valley venture capitalists, and those VCs were early in Bitcoin as well. But then they realized they got their 100,000x in Bitcoin, and now they want to redo it. So they invest in Ethereum, and they get another 100,000x in Ethereum, and then they want to redo it. So they invest in Coinbase, and then they invest in all the tokens that Coinbase lists. So 0x is an Ethereum protocol token that these investors, these Silicon Valley investors, are backing. And then they get this listed on Coinbase because they own Coinbase, and this helps the Ethereum price. It helps the Coinbase stock price because it's more people trading more coins, which gives them more fees. And they actually sell 0x to retail people. Now, this 0x thing is like this complicated Ethereum protocol token. It's not needed. What's it called? Not 0x, but
the coin is called 0x, ZRX. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ZRX is the coin, but 0x is the token. Or just ZRX is the name.
It's just the name. ZRX is the name of 0x. It's called 0x.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's so confusing.
Yeah, that's my bad.
0x, I'm pretty sure it's just an exchange protocol for swapping Ethereum tokens around.
Yeah, I believe that was what it was. Yeah. And
you don't need a ZRX coin for that. Like Bitcoin, philosophically, is principled differently because when people build things on Bitcoin, they don't launch tokens that people can gamble on, like to dump bags on retail, right? They just build the technology so that it works on Bitcoin. A perfect example of the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is a protocol that allows us to scale payments on Bitcoin for beyond the million people or so that are in Bitcoin right now to billions potentially. So the Lightning Network, they launched this. It was actually 2017 when it went live, and it was perfectly juxtaposed in January 2017. Lightning Network goes live, and there's no token. And this is while a lot of people were building cool Bitcoin technology, decided, well, everyone else is going to do it. I'm going to do it too, like Blockstack, Filecoin, Rootstock, all these cool technologies that were being built on Bitcoin. A lot of the teams saw the FOMO that was happening with the 2016 Ethereum ICO bubble, and they gave in to that greed, and they launched a coin with their protocol, with their technology. So Bitcoin decided, like the developers that are working on the scaling technology, the exchange technology, whatever, of Bitcoin, which is Lightning Network, we're going to launch this thing, the original mission, which is just technology. There's absolutely no need to add a Lightning token into the mix here. And then at the same time, Coinbase lists ZRX, which is backed by all these Silicon Valley venture capitalists that are trying to get like 100x return on ETH, ZRX, and Coinbase equity. And then Coinbase starts educating the people about, how can you use ZRX and how can you use the 0x protocol? People are overwhelmingly just searching, how do I buy Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Coinbase ranks number one for that term. They buy their Bitcoin on Coinbase, and then Coinbase starts selling them protocol coins. It's like, how is this not a casino?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't realize, but ZRX is not in Coinbase right now, is it?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Oh, let me sign in. It's been a long time since I logged into Coinbase.
Yeah, it's there. It was listed on Poloniex and Coinbase around the same time that the Lightning Network went live in 2017, and you could see there was an insider pump. Like there's a lawsuit actually against Coinbase right now for insider trading because for a few of these assets before they listed it, you can see the price goes up, and then like the next day, we launched ZRX or we launched whatever. So there was obviously some sort of insider shenanigans happening there. Somebody on the listing team, shared it with the team or whatever. People start buying the coin before it gets listed, and then it's just shenanigans, man. That's why I don't even tell people to use Coinbase. I'm just like, Bitcoin only. Don't use Coinbase. Hold your own keys. Don't fall for the altcoin schemes, but it's hard.
Oh my God, there's a
For new
lot of
people.
stuff in Coinbase now.
Oh man, I'm sending you're like a recovering drug addict. I shouldn't be sending you there.
No. I mean, it's a little scary because I look at this and I'm like, dude, I remember selling Stellar Lumens, Kyber Network, OMG, and Ripple, and probably Zcash or something like that at like massive losses, dude.
Yeah, and if, Binance and stuff, they're all adding tons of tokens. We thought that the regulators were going to come in and clean up the space, but they haven't. I think they got overwhelmed. Then the pandemic happened, which sent them even back further. So they're being very slow at stopping the shenanigans that are kind of happening here. But then it's left up to Bitcoiners to educate new people coming into the space about why these things aren't worth paying attention to, and then that makes a lot of us look like miserly old grandpas or get off my grass,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all calling this stuff scammy and whatever. But I don't know. What do you think? Like, talking to your network, you interact with like lots of people in like you were just talking to Ray Dalio,
Mhm.
for God's sake.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to these people in your circle, does Bitcoin ever come up? And like, what are they? I'm curious what the conversations are like if you ever talk to people about Bitcoin these days.
I did ask Ray Dalio if he ever felt FOMO, and he'd never heard the term. So there's a conversation towards the end of the show on the Jordan Harbinger Show with Ray Dalio. There's a conversation where I ask him and explain FOMO to him, and the answer, I don't 100% recall exactly what he said, so I don't want to misquote him. Plus, it's a good tease probably for the episode. But I thought it was interesting that Ray Dalio had never heard of FOMO. Like,
yeah.
And even when I said, fear of missing out, like missing out on an investment, and he was just like, like he didn't seem to be. It was weird because I thought he would go, oh my God, yeah, all the time, But
yeah, I would think so.
Because even in his book, in Principles, he talks about getting out of silver when silver was at like $10. This is probably in the 70s, for all I know. And he was kicking himself because his friend stayed in silver and spent all of his money and put it all in silver, and it went up to like $90. And then it went down to $9. So the guy lost everything.
That's like the crypto bubble, but the 80s version where it was with metals.
And I thought that was interesting that one of the richest men he knew, who was also one of the wealthiest guys probably in the world at that time, I think he'd mentioned, put everything into silver. It's like, dude, you're one of the richest people around. Throw a couple $100 million in there and be satisfied with selling it when you're up 30%. Like, aren't there all kinds of phrases in investment land that say like, you'll never go broke selling when you're up 20% or something like that?
Yeah, you'd think that he'd have a good risk management strategy for that.
Yeah, he probably had everybody telling him sell, and he's like, you don't know squat. I'm up 900%,
Yeah, and anybody listening to this that invested in ICOs or crypto in the last bubble probably can relate with that.
Hell yeah, dude. I kept stuff where I was like, it's only at 19x. I'm going to wait till it hits 20 and sell. Are you crazy? That's 2,000%.
I know. It's at 20x. It could go 100x,
It could go, this could be my ticket. I eventually stopped believing that, but early on I sure did. I mean, there was a time where I sold a ton of, I forget what it is now, but I saw it going way up and I sold it, and it was 19 something X, maybe 18x. And I remember looking after I sold it, why did it go up? And it was like, like you said before, McAfee, he had tweeted about it. And I was like, oh, cool. He must really like it. Maybe I shouldn't have sold it. And then like 3 days later, I'm like, wait a minute. This guy's clearly just tweeting everything. I wonder if he's getting paid to do it. And then I think it came out later that he charged like $250,000 to like these companies. And he would tweet about your coin and say it's great. And I was like, wow, you're just a horrible person.
Yeah. He's like an anarchist, hardcore libertarian, whatever. So I can see from his perspective how he could rationalize that what he was doing was okay. But it's people are getting hurt by this stuff, and the fundamentals suck for these things. So I kind of look at it like myself. Like if someone's a no coiner, right, and they're like, "Oh, but you're doing the same thing, recommending people buy Bitcoin." I'm like, yeah, but I'm not recommending people put everything they have into it, and not saying it's going to go up 100x in the next couple of months. Like, I do think Bitcoin is going to go up potentially 100x if it succeeds at its mission of like challenging gold as a reserve currency of the world over 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I recommend you put like a small percentage of your net worth into it. It's like that makes more sense than Digibyte is going to be the new game coin. Fortnite's probably going to use it. It's going to go to $1 billion. Like, buy it. And then you're taking $250,000 to say that. Like, yeah, that's a scam.
Yeah, that's a scam. And so I don't get it. I don't understand the philosophy behind trying to rationalize something's okay. If you're an anarchist or something like that, does that mean you can hurt other people? I didn't hear that. You know, like he knowingly hurt other people and just didn't care.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just because he's old or he's done too many drugs or he just enjoys the thrill of like having a lot of followers on Twitter or like running from the law or what. But my partner in my venture company, Micah, he invested in this documentary Adventures in Crypto, and they went to John McAfee's like house on this island he was at
in Belize.
And he was, I don't know, he's not in Belize anymore. It was like somewhere else, and he was like open carrying AK-47s around the house.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was crazy.
He was on James Altucher's podcast, and he had asked to come on my podcast, and I checked out like 10 minutes of James Altucher's podcast, and I was like, this guy's mentally ill. Like, not even like a laughing matter. Like, he's crazy. He sounded like straight up doing bath salts. You know what I mean? Like, he was just paranoid and a nutso, and I thought, this is an unhealthy person. You know, by all accounts here, this is bad. So
if you won't have him on your show, then I probably shouldn't have him on mine.
You can have him on your show. Just be aware that you're going to get a crazy person. You're not going to get like a guy who's got some well-reasoned arguments about cryptocurrency. You're going to get a crazy guy who's on. Who's on?
No, I tried to interact with him before, like when he just came into the Bitcoin scene, and it was really obvious early on he didn't have a clue what cryptocurrency, what was valuable about cryptocurrency. He didn't know much about Bitcoin, but he was presenting himself as like the Bitcoin guy. You know, he was going to invest like hundreds of millions of dollars into Bitcoin mining and have the biggest Bitcoin mine in North America. And meanwhile, he doesn't even realize that BCH is not Bitcoin, and he's talking to Jihan Wu and Roger Ver, and he thinks that's actually Bitcoin, and he thinks he's going to make money mining those things when it's not really Bitcoin. And he ended up, I guess the company went public and went like down 90%. Oof. And he doesn't talk about it anymore for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Oh man.
But those guys all had problems too. They all lost a lot of money betting against Bitcoin and trying to fork it and all that. But to talk about like to loop back to this conversation started with about the banks. We just talked about risk management. The least risky thing that you can do in this Bitcoin banking stuff is probably what you're hearing about, because you said it was like 10% a year.
Yeah,
something
I mean,
they were saying.
I tried to find one and I couldn't because people keep sending them to me.
BlockFi is one of the ones. They sponsor all the big Bitcoin podcasts. I don't use that, but here's the way I don't think those are scammy. I don't think that those are like super high risk. But the way I look at it is I lost a lot of my Bitcoin in Mt. Gox.
Oh, that sucks.
Not your keys, not your coins. I learned that lesson, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't think for my risk profile, it's worth the 10% a year to potentially lose my Bitcoin. So I don't think it's any different than you having your Bitcoin or your dollars in, doing second mortgages, where like maybe you're wealthy and you have a little bit extra money sitting in the bank and it's earning you 0.01% interest rate or whatever, and you want to make a return. Well, you can actually get 8, 10, 12% interest on a second mortgage, like doing second mortgage loaning to people. So a friend of ours that's in the MMT group, Jeff House and Diana House, they do this in Canada. And so I tried this out with them this year, and it's actually pretty decent. Like I'm getting like a 9% return on after fees, because they take fees to manage it for me. They're like my mortgage crypto person, So yeah, like this guy wanted to buy 20 houses in the area here in Ontario, and he's not going to be able to get 20 mortgages from the bank or one big mortgage for these like secondary homes he's doing, this business he's doing. So for some reason, he's willing to pay us 12%. The syndicate of investors that Jeff and Diana are managing. So I threw a little bit of money in. I'm a small percentage of the pool, but I just wanted to see what it was like. Can you actually get 9% interest on loans? And so this guy's got this business and he's doing Airbnbs or whatever he was doing. And I thought we were going to get wrecked when the pandemic happened. I thought, oh, great, I just lost all that money. But the dude's actually doing okay. Like, he's still paying his monthly interest. So I'm making like 9% interest on that. Now, I only will put, say, like 5% of my net worth towards this strategy because there is a risk that this guy's actually going to lose the houses and we're going to have to try to, because we have legal rights to the properties. But if that happens, it's complicated. And you could lose some of your principal. So I'm not going to take all of my money and give it to them to do these risky loans with. The same way I wouldn't take all of my Bitcoin and give it to the guy that runs BlockFi or any of these other companies. But I do think it's a legitimate thing. And hey, if you want to make an extra 10% on your Bitcoin and take the risk of somebody like losing your Bitcoins, just be aware that it's risky, right? Like just be aware that it's like, but you could potentially lose it. And I don't think it's worth it because I see the potential upside of holding my own Bitcoin keys as 100x in 10 years. And why would I want to like risk 100x for 10%, even if the risk is small that these guys are going to bail and leave and take off? So I just don't recommend people use them just because it's not for me.
Yeah. Of course, it's like scary.
If you want to take a small percentage of your Bitcoin and try it out or whatever, I don't think it's that risky. And especially there's one called Unchained Capital now, where they've developed this protocol where you hold it's like multi-sig, so you can actually hold a signature to the key, so they can't exit scam you.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. This is 8.6. BlockFi is 8.6% per year, as seen in Bloomberg and CNBC and Forbes, which you can definitely just pay to get into, and Cheddar. Yeah. So interest-bearing crypto interest account, our BlockFi interest account lets you put crypto to work and earn monthly interest payments in the asset type that you deposit. So you earn Bitcoin or ETH or US dollar coins.
I just wonder, what are these guys doing to generate those returns? Like, how do you get that kind of size return? And then that's why I shared the story of me doing the mortgage lending, because I mean, I would wonder, like, why is somebody going to pay me 9-10% to loan money on a property? You know, like, I guess people make rational decisions, but maybe it is rational. Maybe they discovered a way to like make a good profit, and they just, for some reason, they're making that decision to pay me 9% on the loan, right?
I mean, first of all, it's up to that amount. And then also, it seems like they probably I know they give crypto-backed loans. So there's some profit there. Crypto-backed loans allow you to access liquidity without selling. Use your crypto as collateral, unlock up to 50% of the value in US dollar.
That is a cool feature that I do recommend people use. So there's the company here in Canada called Ledin. And my sister has actually used them, the same sister that thought she was going to jail from the CRA scam. So the cool thing about the Bitcoin loan is, like, let's say you're holding 20 Bitcoin, right? And you've been holding since $1,000 and you think it's going to go to $100,000. So you're long Bitcoin, right? You don't want to sell right now, but you maybe need to pay for some expenses. You got some new podcast gear or something you need to buy or whatever. You need $10,000 and you don't want to take a loan at the bank. You don't want to sell your Bitcoin because that 10,000 is probably going to be 100,000, and you don't want to be the guy that sold his Bitcoin for pizza and that pizza is now a $10 million pizza. So you're thinking, like, what can I do? Should I sell some Bitcoin? Should I just get a loan from the bank? Okay, so these companies like Ledin and BlockFi and stuff, they allow you to deposit your Bitcoin. So say you put 2 Bitcoin with them, right? And now you've got $20,000 worth of Bitcoin deposited with them. You're actually taking a loan of $10,000 backed by the 2 Bitcoin. So the price could crash like 50% and you're still safe. And you got $10,000 now. You didn't sell your Bitcoin. You just took an advance on it temporarily and you do whatever you need to do with it. Now, if you think Bitcoin's going to 100K, then you will then have $200,000 worth of Bitcoin collateralizing this loan. And if that happens, you can just write down the loan so that you'll end up getting back like 1.8 Bitcoin or something rather than your full 2 when you pay back the loan. So you got your 10K, you didn't sell any Bitcoin, you just lost a little bit of Bitcoin because you're paying interest the whole time. And the interest is pretty high. It's like 10% or 12%.
It's 4.5 it looks like here.
That's to earn, I think. To borrow against your crypto, I think you pay like a 10 to 12% interest rate yearly.
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked like at the fine print here, so to speak. So yeah, so you basically need like 5. Here, there's a loan calculator. I'm curious. It sounds like we're doing a commercial for them, but I am curious how this works.
Well, my sister's doing it now, and yeah, you keep looking at it though. I can give you some insight as you go.
Yeah. So if I want to borrow 55 grand, they need 12.05 Bitcoin from me,
which is worth like 100 and what? 100.
That's worth $115,000.
Okay,
US dollars.
So you're over collateralizing it by 2x almost.
Yeah.
Or it looks like more than 2x. And that's because Bitcoin's so volatile that there's probably a good chance in the next 2 years we're going to see another 50% drop in Bitcoin at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to get liquidated, so you want to have it over collateralized. So when Bitcoin goes down 50%, if you just gave them one Bitcoin and then, or say in this $55,000 example, if you gave them the $55,000 worth of Bitcoin at this point, which is like 5.5 Bitcoins or something, if the price dropped, they have to sell your Bitcoin on the market, and then you just have no Bitcoin anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they want you to over collateralize, and that's why you want to over collateralize too, because if you're long Bitcoin and you think it's actually going to be $100K to $1 million in the future, you don't want to lose out on that upside because you didn't put enough in there. But it gets very expensive as the price drops, because then when the price drops, you still need to be 2x over collateralized. So let's say you've got a $55,000 loan, you're depositing $115,000 now, right? So for easy numbers, you're taking a 5 Bitcoin loan, you're getting 50,000. You're putting 10 Bitcoin in, right? The price drops, so that 10 Bitcoin is now only worth 50,000. Your loan is 50,000. You got to deposit another 10 Bitcoin to keep it good.
That's right.
So it's like, if you're really playing this game, you better have a lot of Bitcoin to keep throwing in, because as the price goes down, you're going to get liquidated and you're going to lose all your Bitcoin unless you keep doubling up. So it's very risky if you think that the price of Bitcoin is going to be continually volatile and you're using like your whole stash. If you're like, I'm going to take a loan on all my Bitcoin, you're screwed. You're pretty much going to get liquidated. So that's why I don't recommend people use this stuff either, because it's really stressful.
That is stressful. I hadn't thought about having to come back and top it off with something that you maybe don't own or have to buy.
Yeah, you may have to buy Bitcoin, with the loan money or something like that.
Yeah.
and then you're kind of screwed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The problem where I'm at for me with crypto is like, I have enough where it's like sort of interesting for me to sit on, but it's not enough for me. Like, I wouldn't bother getting a $55,000 loan when I can just like get a check from an advertiser next week that's like that amount and then put it in my bank account. But that's probably healthy, because if you need loans against your crypto, you either got a ton of crypto because you were in early like you, or you own entirely too much cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about it though, and I don't think I said this yet, but the good thing about these loans, these crypto-backed loans, is like, for me, let's say I recently just bought a house in Nova Scotia.
Congrats. Is that the one you sent me the video? The dope house on the water?
No, I wanted that one, but that was just too much money.
Okay.
So it was $105,000, this house.
That's a very reasonable price for a house. Does it have a roof?
Yeah, right? I know. But it's Nova Scotia. It's in a small village in Nova Scotia, so real estate prices are pretty low for, if we looked at similar on-the-water houses here in Ontario, this house would be $1 million easy. It's a small house, but still the waterfront, the size of the house, the bedrooms, whatever. So we go back and forth from Cape Breton and visit, and my family's from there. So I'm like, I'm going to be a landowner in the village that I grew up in, going to my grandmother's house every summer. So we bought this place. Now, for me, it would make sense for me to take some of my Bitcoin and collateralize it and get a loan for the $100,000 rather than going to the bank, because I don't pay capital gains taxes on that loan because I'm just borrowing money. So it makes sense if I don't have any money, right? It would make sense for me to get a loan on my Bitcoin because I still think Bitcoin's going to $1 million. I don't want to give up the gains, but I want to enjoy this house. So if I take a loan on the Bitcoin, then I'm not paying capital gains early because it's not a realized profit. It's a loan. So you're still you're still anchored to the potential upside of Bitcoin. So that's the one thing that makes it tempting for me to want to do for like this purpose where this is a house. I want to enjoy it. I don't want to pay cap gains taxes by selling Bitcoin and buying the house. So I will maybe take a loan and like 2x collateralize it. That's the idea it's for people that have like, it's for miners and for people that had some crypto early, or even maybe some high net worth people, guy like Ray Dalio who was it? Paul Tudor Jones eventually like put 1% of his assets in Bitcoin. Like people like that believe it's going to go way up in the future, so they want to keep exposed to the price appreciation. So yeah, there's an interesting use case for it for sure. But for the average person, I don't think it makes any sense. Just hold your Bitcoin.
Yeah, I guess looking at it, it'd be like, sure, would be nice to have $55,000 sitting around or whatever I can get loan value for, but then paying interest on it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Right. You got to really be long Bitcoin, and you really got to believe it's going to go up at least 2x over the next couple of years because you're paying 12% or so a year interest on it. So it does not make a lot of sense unless you're like a super bullish on Bitcoin. Don't want to pay the capital gains taxes until it's much higher.
Yeah.
Well, we've been going for quite a while here. I got to be conscious of your time here, Jordan. I think we're only supposed to do an hour.
Yeah, no, this is fun. I liked it, and hopefully your listeners found some value in it. It wasn't just us rambling, because there's definitely a lot to talk about. I thought this was interesting. I'm kind of coming at this from a more layman perspective or lay perspective, and I'm like, there's a lot we're still hearing about. And it is funny to see, or I don't know if funny is quite the right word, that this scams and the little like, hey, we'll do this and give you that. Like the tricky sleight of hand is like starting to make a comeback for a lot of this crypto stuff right now.
Yeah, you're like the perfect representation of a smart person that's influential that came into crypto because you saw the prices were going up and people were recommending it to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had listeners donate Bitcoin to me in like 2011 or whenever it was, and I kept it. So my first Bitcoin...
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Oh, yeah. My first Bitcoin was like in a wallet that I'd basically printed off some kind of address or something and kept it like in my wallet for a while. And then saved...
paper wallet.
Yeah, paper wallet. I think I saved the text file because I was like, it's a Bitcoin. It was worth like $30 or $25 or something like that. At the time, because it was probably Bitcoin was under $100 or was at $100 or something like that. So I was just like, I'll just hold on to it. It's like a cool thing to have. It's fun that a couple listeners have donated the 0.3 Bitcoin in total, and now I kept it. And now I'm like, oh, thanks for the, I don't know, $3,000 guys or whatever this is
nice
worth.
Tip.
So then I already sort of had an idea, and I never bought more, which is dumb because I looked at it and I thought this is really cool, but I didn't understand it. Like most people, I didn't understand it. And then a lot of my friends got into Ethereum early, bought a bunch of it, every time we'd hang out and go to sushi, they couldn't stop looking at their phone because every time we'd order another roll and they'd be up $5,000. You know what I mean? And then they'd go, hey, you want to get dessert? And I'd go, sure. What are you thinking? Oh, let's go to this ice cream place. They'd check their phone at the ice cream place and they'd have earned $10,000 since we started dinner. You know what I mean? Or more. It was crazy. Yeah. And so I finally got into it late enough. The other thing, and this is a story for another day, was I was in probably 2014. I was sitting next to a friend, someone and she told me to invest in Ethereum because her son invented it. And I said, yeah, right. Okay, your kid invented cryptocurrency. I've never heard of this Ethereum business. It's good that your mom thinks it's cool though, and it turned out to be, freaking Ethereum. She's like, you should buy some. It's 48 cents or something, or whatever it was. I'm like, whatever, lady. Whoops.
Yeah, well, that was the same thing with me. I had the chance to invest in that one, and like I said, the part of me is the capitalist brain, right? Where I'm like, people are going to be doing this. It's probably going to go up. I'm going to buy some because I'll just sell it and get more Bitcoin, right? That's my mentality. It's just another way to mine Bitcoins. You can run the computer hardware, or you can earn it somehow, or get your listeners to tip you, or you can invest in these, things that these kids are building and Dogecoin and Ethereum and all that stuff. So many crazy stories. Like right now, there's this Link coin. Have you heard about that one?
Mm-mm.
It's like this coin that 4chan has been championing all year.
I wouldn't
And-
trust that.
Well, it went up like 70x in the last couple of months, and now there's a bunch of millionaires from 4chan
Oh my
that
God.
they made like $1 million, millions of dollars off of pumping this Link coin. So, I mean, it doesn't, and the thing doesn't need to have great fundamentals in a crazy market where the Fed is printing money and people are getting free checks, and the consensus is that numbers are going to go up. It's one of those rising tide lifts all boats scenarios. And unfortunately, it seems like it's starting to happen again, and people are going to get sucked into a lot of things that are
the difference is it's
4chan
not all
memes.
boats. It's the boats that come in last that get screwed, but the boats that were there early, the rising tide lifts. Yeah, that's the thing you got to remember.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. This has been fun. And I know we barely scratched the surface. We didn't even talk about being an FBI informant or freaking or wiretapping
I know,
or anything.
man.
Can do that
I
next
wanted
time.
we got to have to do another
Yeah.
one because I wanted to get to your North Korea stories
yeah.
too. You introduced Dennis, interviewed Dennis Rodman. That was a cool episode.
Yeah, we'll do it
And,
another time for sure.
your history as like a lawyer and a Wall Street guy. So we'll definitely do part 2 with Jordan sometime soon.
Slow down. You need to slow down every once in a while sometimes to see how the world goes round. You need to slow down every once in a while. 'Cause you don't know, you don't need to go so fast.